start with the Black framework debate, and then I'll move on to their, I guess, like their on-case stuff.
Okay.
So the Black framework debate, again, as we've said throughout this debate, it is important that we have the interrogation of anti-Blackness at the center of the debate, not because we want to focus on Black people specifically. That is stereotypical. That is not what we were talking about. That is, just a generalization that puts our debate, it narrows our debate into such a small field that it doesn't even give us the credit that there are people that are being oppressed because of this anti-Black world. They want to talk. They said that we don't give a definition. Well, I mean, it's just because they don't understand the definition, and just because they keep asking the same questions that to try and get us to make no sense does not mean that it's abusive in any way. I think what is abusive is to exclude an entire group of people, not just Black people, but people who are seen as that Black in body, which doesn't necessarily have to be Black people. Okay, which I repeatedly say, I'm not going to say it again. Right? The problem that they have with that abusive definition is the fact that we don't want to, with our Black framework, we're challenging the idea that in order to be a participant in this debate space, you need to conform to these ideals that are inherently bad and exclusionary. Again, it's not a race issue. They want to make it into we're white and you said this because you're Black type of thing. But what we're saying is there's a bigger scale than that. This anti-Blackness is not just the Black body. We start with the Black body because the definition of the Black body when it first came to this land was not human, and that is why it is the start of the anti-Blackness debate. It's not the end all be all. It's the start of it, and it needs to be put into this space. But it's not the focus point, and it shouldn't be used in the way that they have. The reason, I'll explain my grouping method. The reason that I grouped it was because they want to talk about the drone strikes as these root causes that will cause this environmental impact, that will cause this PTSD that has been occurring, that will cause this terrorism. But but drone strikes is a product of this system. If you don't, attack the system that created these bad policies, then you are doomed to repeat them in different ways. And I'll move on to their on-case. The terrorism, PTSD, and environmental issues are, again, byproducts of the war on terror, which was created and worsened by the USFG, which they stated in the first cross-sex. The exclusion of Blackness within this space within policy itself is the reason the war on terror exists. We discuss the Black body because it's the antagonist of the state structure. When Black people were brought to this country, they weren't human, and that's why they, again, need to be, that's why it's a part of the definition of anti-Blackness. It isn't the definition of anti-Blackness, it is part of it because they are the unhuman. The F talks about how the world is anti-Middle Eastern, but what they repeatedly fail to see is that the anti-Blackness is a spectrum. The Black body on one end, the white body on the other. And the fact that the dichotomy exists is the reason why some bodies, like the Middle Eastern body, like the female body, are being seen as undesirable. And I'll extend our Barn 07 card, which clearly says that the AF's impacts are inevitable and increasingly likely because they work within these racist walls that do not take into account this anti-Blackness. And until we take into account the anti-Blackness, until we, replace these racist walls with anti-racist institutions, we cannot actually solve for any of the ills that they talked about. We cannot stop the war on terror because if we created the war on terror was a good idea for the USFG before, but now they're saying it's okay. They're redoing it, but we're working within the same structure, so we're doomed to repeat those issues. And the fact that we do not focus on the oppressed creates the Black-white spectrum. And they talked about dehumanization as like as a big impact that should be really considered in this debate. And we agree with that. Like we have been repeatedly talking about anti-blackness, and anti-blackness is the definition of dehumanization. Dehumanization in the sense that these people weren't even humans to begin with. So they want to talk about how their impacts come first, but it doesn't make sense that, you know, these. Like I said before, drone attacks are happening right now. There is no nuclear war. They couldn't give us a real time frame on anything that happened. And what we're saying is right now in this anti-black world, there are people being excluded, people being oppressed, people being killed because they are that undesirable body. And that is why we need to focus on framework. I'll send our Macintosh 88 card, which talks about how the U.S. opens doors based on this idea of privilege, this institution of dominance created by the white body that created the dichotomy, that created these racist structures. And they want to talk about how there's no links and internal links, which is a dissad, you know, structure. Like, they want to question my knowledge, you know, because I don't want to create my K in a dissad shadow. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And for them to attack it on that point does not make any sense either. What we're talking about is a critique, as a better look at the framework of the debate, and it's evident. I've given historical examples. Our Nakamura card talks about how it can't solve within the context of the USFG.
You have 339.